if you have people in leadership positions that don't really get that the way to scale this thing, the way to really be successful is through building infrastructure, then the priorities are not going to be set properly in the organization. Instead, people will be blamed, or circumstances will be blamed, when really we just need to get together and establish a method for doing this practice, whatever that is.
Hi there. Welcome back to the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Franklin, and this is a show where we help you learn and master the skills you need to grow your leadership effectiveness and enjoyment. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as I post a new session so you don't miss a single episode. And before we get started, I want to mention the Christian Leader Blueprint. It is a solid model for leadership development to help you and your team establish a better rhythm of life, to see yourself more clearly, to leverage your strengths, and to build more productive relationships. And I have that in two formats now. I have a free short guide that you can find on ryanfranklin.org, and I have a brand new book, The Christian Leader Blueprint. You can find that on Amazon or wherever you buy books. I'll put a link in the show notes. One more thing I want to mention, and I'm really excited about this. Almost a month ago, I launched my brand new Christian Leader Community Coaching Program, and anyone who joins in the month of October will receive the founding member badge, which you have a couple of days left at the time of release of this recording. And in an effort to sort of reward my existing audience, I'm also offering for a short time a 40% discount until October 31st, which is just a few days away, or the first 50 members, whichever comes first. So head on over to ryanfranklin.org. There's a detailed webpage on everything the community offers, along with links to join. And I would absolutely love for you to check it out. And while you're there, you can pick up the Christian Leader Blueprint short guide for free. And I've got some other free things there as well. And so without any further delay, let's get to our session. I'm excited today to have on the podcast a new friend of mine, Kevin Stone. I want to start by telling you a little bit about Kevin. He served for 18 years as an executive pastor of a thriving independent church in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And he now spends a ton of his time as an executive coach, serving pastors and senior leaders all around the country. I've known Kevin from a distance for a long time. Many years ago, he started a blog, which is now called executivepasitoronline.com. And I've followed that blog for probably the last 15 years. He has a passion for sharing good stuff with other leaders. And there's not many blogs that I've followed for as long as his. And I would say it's because it has some tremendous stuff. He's a great curator, as many of his posts are highlighting other people's books and other people's blogs and content. He even highlighted the Christian Leader Blueprint a few months back. But he also has a wealth of his own personal content as well, including a new executive pastor course, which I'll get him to share more about before we wrap up today. But today, we're going to dive into a subject that he is very passionate about, the 8 fundamentals of leadership. So, Kevin, I just want to welcome you to Christian Leader Made Simple podcast.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
All right. Well, before we get started for today, can you share with our audience your vision for starting Executive Pastor Online so many years ago, and why you did, why you started that, and kind of how that's shaped up over the years?
Yeah, so fairly new into the role of executive pastor at my church. I was involved in getting the church started before we even got to our first weekend. And very shortly after that, the senior pastor and I had a talk, and we were kind of talking about how we felt that we were called as a church to be a teaching church, so that in other words, we wanted to share everything that we were doing with anybody that wanted to hear it, anybody that would listen. And that took different forms for different staff members, as we shared that vision and with the rest of the staff. But for me, it was a blog where I just said, you know what, I'd like to write, and I'm just going to take the stuff that we're doing here and share it, no matter what it is, whether it be an operating procedure, a concept, a method, whatever, and just put it out there for anybody that's interested. And that started off being, I don't remember, you remember early on in the blogging, in the blogosphere, there was a website, I can't remember now, blogger.com. I mean, there was a place that you actually could like sign up and just start blogging. And so I utilized that, and I think my very first URL was secondchairperspective.com. And I still have that URL. If you go to Second Chair Perspective, it points to Executive Pastor Online. But so I started off as Second Chair Perspective, and then I eventually went to Executive Pastor Online, and been doing it ever since. I just share anything and everything that comes to mind. I'm a very practically minded individual, making the transition from corporate America into the church. And I've brought that practicality to ministry, and then I've just shared that as I go, like you said, over the last 15 years. And I've gotten quite a bit of, there have been quite a few people who have connected with me, and there are a lot of readers, a lot of subscribers, well by now.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so glad that you chose to walk down that road, because you've helped me tremendously over the years as I have, worked through various aspects of my church ministry and interacting with staffs and, in various things that I've obviously had to navigate around over the years. But you wrote a series of blogs years ago that turned into part of your recently published course that outlined the 8 fundamentals of leadership. And so I would love for us to go through those today. That's what I've asked you to come on the show to do today. And the first one there is don't play the blame game. Don't play the blame game. And so just a question to kind of kick us off. Why is it important for leaders not to blame their team when things sort of go wrong?
Well, biggest reason is 99 times out of 100, it's not their fault. In my experience, when a mistake is made, and in the workplace or on a church staff, the individual who made the mistake was just doing the best they could with what they had. They are functioning in the role as whoever is in leadership has defined it. They're using the tools that the leaders have provided. They're again, 99 times out of 100. We could talk about the point, the 1% of the time, but 99 times out of 100, they're doing the best they can with what they have. And who's the one responsible for providing them with what their job description looks like and what tools they have?
Yeah, job descriptions, which would sort of be a vision for their job, and then their capability of even performing their job. And I think the intent there would be more of creating a culture of accountability instead of blame, basically.
Well, again, it's that, but the other, what I'm really trying to say when I wrote the article, "Don't Play the Blame Game," is more of it's a systems thinking idea, and it's like, okay, so who's responsible for the system? Who's responsible for creating the system? And in any organization, it's the leader, for better or for worse. And so when the mistake is made, If you are looking for the person to blame, you need only to find the nearest mirror, and you can find the individual to blame. And again, I'm talking 99 times out of 100.
Right.
There is that small percentage of the time when it is the individual for whatever reason. They're in the wrong seat on the bus, or maybe you're in the wrong bus.
Yeah.
But it's that systems thinking mentality, and those that are in the authority, or those that are in the leadership positions, are the ones responsible for creating a system to allow individuals to thrive and to be successful.
That makes sense. Absolutely. I love systems, and the more systems we can put in place, the less we have that opportunity to even play the blame game. So your second one is to be a contagious optimist, and I'm going to kind of run through these pretty quick since we have 8 of them, and not dive too deep into each one of them. But that number 2, be a contagious optimist. Why is optimism considered a valuable trait for a leader?
Well, I mean, we can come at that from many different directions, but I think for today, what comes to mind first is leadership is, as anybody really should know, leadership is vision casting, is having the leader is the one who should have an idea where we're going. What lays ahead? What is our objective? In other words, where are we trying to get to? What's that place look like? And hopefully that's a positive place, or that's a place that's better than where we are today. And so there's clear reason to be optimistic, right?
Right.
So
that makes sense.
So when you run into somebody who's in a leadership position that is not so optimistic, even pessimistic, it makes you wonder, do they really have a vision for the future?
Yeah.
Is the place that we're trying to go, or the place that I as a leader am trying to lead people, better than the place I'm at? And if it is, then I should be optimistic about that. But if I am not demonstrating optimism, then I'm going to be a leader that's very difficult to follow.
So the optimism versus negativity type mentality, that's sort of a litmus test, in your opinion, of vision, the vision that the organization feels.
There's a direct link between good vision casting and optimism.
That is a great point. I've never looked at it like that. I'm glad you brought that out, because that is reality. If I'm creating a vision for a ministry or a business or wherever I may find myself leading in, I'm not going to paint the picture in a negative light. So
think about it. Optimism is contagious.
Yeah, that's true. It is contagious. Just like negativity or cynicism is contagious as well. But the leader sets the tone for that.
If I'm the leader and I'm pessimistic, or I'm just a bummer to be around, that's not going to be any fun for anybody.
No.
And so what I try to say in the article, and still say routinely in my coaching practice, as leaders, we must figure out how to be optimistic. It's just an absolute must. And
I like that.
It's until we figure that out, it's going to detrimentally affect our performance as a leader if we can't find a way to be optimistic.
Yeah. So Kevin, if you're in a place and you have some negative things going on around you, you got to be truthful to that, right? And be able to admit that and not deflect that or ignore that. And highlighted the same light, we can also create a level of optimism as well in moving forward and moving out of those negative things. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
That is that I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, well, great. So the third thing is building infrastructure that is critical. Building infrastructure that is critical. What does building infrastructure actually mean in a leadership context, and why is it critical? Why is it crucial?
So, fundamental to leadership is understanding that building infrastructure is critical.
Mm-hmm.
It's critical to success. It's critical to the carrying out the mission of the organization. In the local church, the mission of Christ is the most important mission ever. And if you have people in leadership positions that don't really get that the way to scale this thing, the way to really be successful is through building infrastructure, then the priorities are not going to be set properly in the organization. And people, instead, people will be blamed, or circumstances will be blamed, when really we just need to get together and establish a method for doing this practice, whatever that is. Take assimilation, or welcoming first-time guests, and how that is done, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a need to have an infrastructure in place to welcome a first-time guest and to help them get to the next step, because connecting them to the local church helps us to accomplish the mission of taking the church to the next level, getting people involved in the local church, and ultimately getting them across the line of faith, and so on and so forth. So if we are sitting in a room and we're disappointed that we don't believe we're connecting first-time guests that well, the first question is, do we have a process in place? Is everybody aware of it? Does it need to be tweaked, or do we need to establish a process so that we do it the same way every time? As the leader, if I understand that, then I'm going to direct people and I'm going to guide people accordingly. If I don't understand that, again, I'm going to look around the room. Well, you guys just aren't connecting people, or you're not inviting enough people, or whatever. Again, it's getting back to the whole blame issue, blaming the people for the performance of the system.
Yeah. So building infrastructure, really, if I think I'm understanding you correctly, that it would be not just systems. Yes, it's building systems, but it's even connecting systems and making sure that the church as a whole is connected, and there's a flow of assimilation, whether it be assimilation or other aspects. If it's the administrative side of a church, it would be, building systems within the administrative that will help a church scale their organization. If they choose not to build systems and not build that infrastructure that's needed, it's going to greatly limit their ability to, go beyond where they're at today.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anything else to add there?
So building infrastructure is a critical aspect. Understanding that infrastructure is critical is fundamental to leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. So the fourth critical component of leadership, fundamental component of leadership, is to eliminate fear. Why should leaders aim to create work environments where employees or volunteers feel safe to take risk and make suggestions? And I'm assuming that's where you're going with this eliminate fear, because we, as much as we try, we're not going to eliminate everything. But I'm assuming you're talking about feeling safe to take risks, to make suggestions, to move forward. Is that kind of what you're you're speaking of, and if so, how can we as leaders create that work environment like that?
Yeah. W. Edwards Deming, in the book Out of the Crisis back in the 80s, I don't remember exactly when it was written down, had Deming's 14 points, and one of them was drive out fear. And that's where that came from, basically. I came from the Deming school back in the early days in the 80s and 90s in manufacturing. But it's the driving out fear or eliminating fear from the organization is using fear as a control mechanism to control people's behavior. You know, in an employment situation, when it comes right down to it, the only way I can control what you do as an employee is by depriving you of your job. That's really, when it comes right down to it, there is a desire on your part to not get fired. And so after that's said, after that's established and understood, the rest is influence. And me as a leader having the ability to influence the organization to move in a direction. And if I'm using a fear tactic, then I'm going to be threatening, whether it's implied threat or actual threat, an employee with, you know, if you don't do this, then I'm going to fire you. Or if you don't do this, then this is going to be the circumstance. Or more common, having a culture created or having kind of this theme in the organization that if I stick my neck out, I make a suggestion about a new way to do something or to point something out that needs to be fixed, I might get my head chopped off.
Yeah.
And so what do? Over time, once I've done that a time or two, I'm like, ooh, I'm not going to do that again. That was painful, right?
Right.
I'm just going to kind of keep my head down and wait and see what the boss does next. Well, that's not a healthy organization when you've got that kind of environment.
I agree, and it's also even a tougher situation if you're dealing with volunteers, because they don't have any skin in the game in regards to income or things of that nature. So it makes it even that much more important. So how can you eliminate? What's some methods, in your opinion, that would help eliminate the fear within their, you know, that would in a team or an organization?
Well, I mean, that's a loaded question, but you know,
that is a loaded question.
to think of an example. So when somebody does make a suggestion, when someone does stick their neck out and decide to do something and it goes poorly, in fact, it fails miserably. As a leader, I have to resist the temptation to get upset.
Yeah.
To call that person into my office and ask them, what in the world were you thinking? Right. And I have to reward that behavior. So when somebody sticks their neck out and takes a chance or takes a risk, even when it doesn't go well, even if it results in a mistake, I'm going to still, you know what? That didn't turn out so well, but I admire your tenacity.
Yeah, you're finding something valuable and optimistic, in other words, about what just went on.
I would like to understand more about how you came up with that idea and why you thought it would work, so that next time we do this, and again, I appreciate the fact that you took the initiative, but the next time, maybe it'll be a little more successful. So let's have that conversation. You know, let's try and improve upon the risk that you took that didn't turn out so well. So how can we make it the next time it will turn out well? And so it's focusing more on the positive and positive reinforcement, again, over time, because I think many of your when you're watching a podcast, are you a viewer or a reader or a listener? Anyway, people that are watching this podcast know culture is not something, or environment is not something that you just say, oh, okay, we're going to have this kind of a culture, or we're going to have this kind of an environment. And then it happens. Culture, environment, theme, or climate is what happens as a result of our behavior, the norms in the organization, what we do and what we say.
Correct. The way that we react or don't react.
So if I'm the kind of leader that rewards risk-taking, and you don't find me getting all upset and blaming people and so on and so forth, then that's going to build on itself. And before you know it, you have a climate or a culture of risk-taking and idea generation and so on and so forth, or real simple technique or tool, brainstorming. Brainstorming has become it's almost like a buzzword nowadays. We're going to have a brainstorming session.
Right. I've been very common language.
I've been in more than a few brainstorming sessions where as soon as somebody has a brainstorm, they get made to feel like they're a dum-dum because they came up with something that was a little off the wall, a little outside the norm, and they're not, and the person won't even write it on the board. That demonstrates to everybody, well, this isn't really brainstorming. This is just, only say what's going to be acceptable in this room, right?
Yeah.
And then that will shut creativity down in a hurry.
And that person just felt judgment and will not volunteer their brainstorming ideas again, likely.
Yeah, it's not brainstorming, is it?
Right. So eliminate fear was number 4. Number 5, moving along to fundamentals of leadership, is they is we. They is we. And so explain that a little bit and why that's important.
It's really it was always kind of a pet peeve to me in my corporate days. Basically all I'm trying to say with they is we is, it's when people refer to management, well, I should say when leaders refer to management as they.
Yeah.
Because obviously if they're a manager, if they're in a leadership position, they is we. Like, I'm a member of management.
Yeah.
And so it's that tendency, especially for lower level leadership, to view the upper level leadership or the people that are really making the decisions as separate from me.
Mm-hmm.
And effectively, what I'm trying to get at here is, if we're in a leadership position, if we're part of the leadership organization or part of the organization, or we're a member of the leadership team in the organization, we need to figure out a way to be on board with the decisions that are being made. And we need to claim those decisions as our own. This isn't they decided, this is we decided, to do this. And if I'm not on board with every decision, that's probably normal. But if I can't find a way to have the conversation with the leadership of the organization and at least make my opinions heard and be part of the decision-making process, then, there's going to be this separation. And if I'm a leader in the organization, I'm part of the decision-making. So it's a sense
of disunity, kind of an us versus them
exactly
sort of mentality. And And so that's, in order to create that sense of unity, it's got to be a we, and I see that in my own church. We have an organizational style church, with a pastoral team and then department leaders, and but when we go to, for instance, pastoral team to department leaders, it needs to be our pastoral team we chose or we decided, or and it's not an us versus them mentality. It's a sense of unity in our decision making, even if I may disagree a little bit. I've got to come to grips with that sense of disagreement before I move into another level of leadership.
If I can't find a way to at least be part of the consensus.
Yeah.
Consensus doesn't mean agreement. Then I need to keep at it, because I can't come to my subordinates or to the individuals that are on my team and say, well, I don't really understand why they want this, but here's what you got to do. Right? That's not going to work too well.
No, creates a sense of disunity.
The story I tell the personal story I tell in that article is, I was working for a corporation here in the Philadelphia area, Comcast. You might have heard of it. And I was an operations director, and I had a staff of managers and senior managers, and we were at a meeting, and we were all having a conversation. The people at the table kept referring to they about, I don't even remember what the issue was. I don't like it when they do this, or I don't agree with what they decided. And I'm like, wait a minute. Aren't we all management? Aren't we all leaders at the table here? Well, yeah. Well, they is we. So that's where that came from.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I like it. So the sixth fundamental of leadership that's really important is lead from the front. And unpack that for us a little bit.
Well, I referenced the movie Braveheart in the article. William Wallace, where he's, if you watch that movie at all, that it was amazing to me that he didn't get killed in the first 5 minutes of the movie, because he was out in the front. He was he was out in the front of all of his soldiers, actually doing the fighting alongside them, getting blood on him. He was like right there in the trenches, shoulder to shoulder with his men. And I started off with that movie because it's just kind of the analogy for what I'm talking about. It's like, from a leadership, from a leadership point of view, you have to lead from the front. You can't. You've heard the saying that I would never ask somebody to do something that I'm not willing to do myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
An example, and I've seen it over and over again. I remember when I first heard the term pontificate. Everybody's familiar with that term, right? It's the idea that I'm sitting in my office at my big desk, and I'm handing out instructions and orders for all of my people, having never been there myself. Having never done what I'm asking them to do, and it's very, very difficult to follow somebody like that.
Yeah.
A dumb example that I used in the article, I think, is at our church we had a multi-purpose gym. It was a gymnasium basically that we would set up to do church in, and we had to set up 700 chairs every Sunday, and then at the end of the 3 services, we would have to take all the chairs down to make room for what was happening in that room next, whatever that was. Usually student ministers that night. And we had a crew of people that would be responsible for tearing the chairs down. I would always find a way, as busy as I was as an executive pastor of a church, nearly 2,000 in average weekly attendance, plenty of stuff going on. I would find a way to grab a chair cart and stack some chairs and put some stacks of chairs away every week alongside the guys that were doing it. And
what do you think that did to the guys, that as you did that, you grabbed the chairs? What do you think that did to them? How did that inspire them or motivate them?
Well, I mean, if you're following somebody, especially if you're doing something unpleasant, or that's not any fun, and you see them doing it, and they're the ones in charge, and you're going, well, heck, if he can do it, I can do it, right? I mean, it just makes sense, cleaning toilets or emptying trash, or we used to call it the ash and trash of the ministry. You ever heard that expression?
I've never heard of that.
Ash and trash, the guys and the gals behind the scenes, that are emptying the trash, setting up the chairs, tearing them down, moving the tables, cleaning the floor, cleaning the restrooms, the individuals behind the scenes that when your average churchgoer walks in, doesn't even occur to them, who set that chair up that they're about to sit in or whatever. So, when you're doing those kinds of tasks anywhere, but especially in the church, having a leader who's willing to do it with you means everything in terms of inspiration and inspiring you to do stuff like that.
Yeah, that is definitely
a form of appreciation. It's a form of appreciation. I am appreciating the fact that they're doing it by doing it with them. And again, these are leadership fundamentals, and I think that is a fundamental. You have to, at least for a few minutes, I realize that as things get larger and responsibilities change, that it's more and more difficult to do that, but you've somehow got to find time to do that.
Yeah. And really, it's more of an emotional thing in that you've probably heard people say, get in the well with them emotionally. That's empathy. Well, this is sort of a practical empathy. I'm getting in the well with them and doing a task that is challenging, for them, and so they need to see that I'm also pushing through the challenge of it and doing it myself, and that makes a huge difference. Definitely a fundamental of leadership. So, number 7 on your list is to be very accessible. And this can be a challenging thing, as you mentioned, as a organization grows. It is hard for some churches and pastors that even pastor, just over a couple of hundred, you've got to start changing the style of pastoring and to more of an organizational style. But still, that doesn't excuse you from being accessible. Can you talk through that a little bit?
I believe that it's fundamental. I remember we had a individual one time who, I think they were writing their message or something, and they had a sticky note on their door. Writing message, don't bother me, or didn't say bother me, but don't, wait until after such and such time.
That's how you took it. Don't bother me.
Yeah. I'm the executive pastor. I walk over to the door and I rip the note off the door. I open it up. I said, dude, what are you doing? I said, don't be putting notes on your door. You have to write your message. Go somewhere else. If you're going to be here, there are people out here that report to you. You are going to be accessible. And it's that concept that a lot of leaders don't get. The he or she is too important. Oh, I better not bother them. When the reality is the leader is there for you. Mm-hmm. The leader is there to support you. The leader is there to make sure you're successful. If you need me, I'm right here. I used to told many, I've led many organizations, many staffs, inside and outside the church. And I've always said, my door is always open. Even when my door is shut, it's open.
Yeah.
Just knock. The only reason it's going to be shut is because I'm having a private conversation with somebody. But it's still open to you. Just knock. Or in this case, just look at me in the window here. I'll know that you need it, right?
Yeah.
And I'll excuse myself for a moment to see if I can help you.
Yeah.
When it comes to phone calls, emails, I think I said in the article that I've had my cell phone number is always available to everyone. I would never in a million years think of having a number that I was trying to guard. And I tell my coaching clients today, yeah, we're only going to meet for a couple of times a month, 2 Zoom calls a month, but just know that if you need me in between calls, just call me, text me anytime, day or night. I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And my phone is literally turned on my nightstand at night. And I have never, ever had anyone abuse that. If I got a call in the middle of the night, I needed to get that call. And
That's good.
Yeah, if people understand that you are accessible to them, it improves your leadership effectiveness multifold.
Yeah. It's really a sense of just being present with that person. A lot of times we perceive or we anticipate that it's going to be, that people are going to abuse it, or it's going to be worse than it really is. But it's most of the time, it's not. I mean, like you said, you've never had anybody abuse that. If you got a call, you needed to get that call. And the reality of it is people that are serving, if I'm serving in a leadership role over an individual or whatever, I want to be there for them and be present with them. And there is so much relational fulfillment and infilling of individuals when they know that you're present with them.
As the leader, I have to work to make sure I don't come across as too busy or otherwise unavailable. I had a supervisor one time many years ago tell me, Kevin, you want to know the secret to success? I said, sure, Larry. He's passed away now, but Lutheran. Larry was a Lutheran. He told me, walk fast and look worried. And he said, and carry a clipboard if you can, right? And I say that in jest, but it's that idea of looking worried, like the guy, oh my God, she's too busy. I can't bother him. That's the opposite of what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah. Walk slow. Don't carry any clipboards. Have a smile on your face.
Don't look worried. Have a smile on your face. Always be present for someone. Yeah. Always be present for someone.
All right. So the last one, number 8 of the fundamentals of leadership, is that you had is consistency. Consistency. How does consistency contribute to a leader's credibility and effectiveness?
Yeah, are you familiar with the game Whack-A-Mole?
I've heard of it. I've never played it though.
It's like it's at like amusement parks and stuff where you got this big honking club.
Well, yes, I guess I have played it.
Yeah, and then the mole comes up and you're trying to whack the mole.
Right.
Right. A lot of leaders.
Chuck E. Cheese is where I was first.
There you go, Whack-A-Mole.
Introduced to Whack-A-Mole.
I have been around leaders who that's how they function. It's like Whack-A-Mole. You know, the hot ticket today. You know, we're gonna forever and ever, amen. We're gonna start doing this, right? And then 2 months later, you're not doing it anymore. And they've completely forgotten about it. And what happens is they lose so much credibility over time that everybody eventually they lose their effectiveness. what I'm talking about with these 8 leadership fundamentals is being an effective leader.
Right.
And the credibility loss that happens when I'm inconsistent is impossible to quantify. If I'm constantly
Even if you're
changing direction,
unstructured, even if you're an unstructured kind of a personality, which a lot of senior leaders are, still does not excuse you from the need to be consistent.
in my humble opinion, I mean,
I agree. I agree. And maybe you don't have to walk the center line with consistency, but you at least need to stay out of the ditch, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely, and what I've said to leaders that I've worked around, are you sure you want to go down this path? Are you sure? Because I don't want to be 2 months from now, not backpedaling. And so let's get good at. To me, inconsistency is poor decision making. If I can't make a decision and then lead my team, lead my congregation, whatever, accordingly, without reversing directions 2 months from now, then I am not a good decision maker. I struggle making decisions. And so inconsistency is really poor decision making, in my humble opinion. So
that's a good way to look at it, for sure.
So focus on the decisions that you're making, and be sure, especially if you're going to do something big or expensive or painful or whatever, that it's really something that you want to do because you need to stick to it. That doesn't mean that you can't realize a mistake down the road and address it.
Right.
But at least in those cases, at least you need to get the same team of people together that you that were with you when you made that decision to begin with, and have the conversation with them about, you know what, this probably was a mistake. Does everybody agree? Let's talk about how we're going to fix this. That's fine, and that's normal, and that is necessary. But it's that, everybody's still doing it, and you forgot about it a long time ago. That's what I'm talking about.
Makes a lot of sense. So the 8 fundamentals of leadership: number 1, don't play the blame game. Number 2, be a contagious optimist. Number 3, building infrastructure is critical. Number 4 is eliminate fear. Number 5 is they is we. Number 6 is lead from the front. Number 7 is be very accessible. And then number 8 is consistency. Now, I've got one more question for you that I want to ask, but before I go there, is there anything else that you want to add to the 8 fundamentals of leadership?
Well, nothing that I want to add, but there are so many people out there that are talking, that have something to say on the topic of leadership. I just hope that what I've been able to add to that conversation has been helpful.
Absolutely. I love it. It's essentially your own take on what is most important from the fundamentals of leadership, and from your level of experience in the corporate world and in the church world. I for one greatly value that deeply. So one last question. I ask everyone this. It can be related to the topic, but it doesn't have to be. What is one thing that you wish that you could tell your younger self?
I thought about that question, and I would say it would be basically be patient.
Yeah.
This is a marathon, not a sprint. And, sitting here, as a 62-year-old, looking back at my younger self, that would probably be one of the big things I would say. Or be patient, because the circumstances change.
Yeah.
I mean, a dumb example is, I remember I had a puppy, a Labrador puppy, who was driving me crazy and chewing up windowsills and, wreaking all kinds of havoc. And I took on this big project, and I went out in my backyard, and I poured a concrete slab, and I built this chain link fence around it, a dog run, right? I need this dog run because it's the only place I can put this dog where it can't destroy something. You know how many times I used that dog run? Probably 3 times. And then I had to look at it for years after that because the dog matured, and over time, the dog's behavior changed where I could leave it in the house.
Yeah.
So it's just a dumb illustration of my point that don't be patient. It'll change.
I love that illustration because I know there's a lot of people out there that are dealing with, even problematic puppy type behavior from people that they lead. And the reality of it is if we as leaders are doing our job, they will change, they will grow, they will develop, and things can change, things will improve. Yep. So I love that.
So my younger self, be patient.
Be patient. All right. Well, Kevin, this has been a great conversation, and I just want to thank you so much for giving me and our audience your time today. It's been such a pleasure to have you on. If people want to connect with you in some way, where can they find you online? Also, tell us about your course a little bit.
So the course is the many roles of the executive pastor. And the 15 plus years that I've been out there, I have by far and away the number one post. You know how on a blog or on a website you can get your stats and which is your most popular post. Right. So by far and away, if you do a Google search on executive pastor or anything like that, the number one post was the executive pastor's job description. And so for my first course, and there are going to be multiple courses, but for my first course, I decided I was going to do a breakdown of the executive pastor's job description. So I've divided the role or the job or the ministry into 10 different roles. And so there are 10 different modules, starting with leader, of course, which is where I talk about the 8 fundamentals, among other things, and ending with infrastructure champion. It's the 10th role. And in between, you got COO, CFO, HR director, or, project manager, construction manager. There are a bunch of there are 10 different modules in the course. Yeah. So that course is available now at a discounted price, actually, because the course isn't completely done yet. I'm done through 8 modules, and I'm working on shooting the 9th module now. Not only that, I just wanted to get it out there to my subscribers and kind of just get some feedback from people. Do you like it? And so
it's a brand new course, and it's not something that's been there for a long time. It's brand new.
No, brand new course. I think we released it July 4th.
Okay.
But anyway, so if you want to connect with me, go to executivepastoronline.com, and then there's a contact page out there.
Okay.
That's and that literally comes directly to my inbox as an email. So it's equivalent to emailing me, and I will respond. I'm a big believer in responding to email. I respond to every email. And if
you responded to my email,
I respond. There you go.
So executivepastoronline.com. They can look at your course and sign up for your blog as well, which is again, I can't stress how great the blog has been, from your own writing to also the curated material that you have. You really, I love the fact that you have so much curated material, and that shows that you're a learner and you go out and resource from other people, and I love that. So I've actually gotten connected to even several other blogs that I follow and read books and things of that nature based on stuff that you have put out on that. And so I for one, really, really appreciate that.
You're referring to the weekly, you're referring to the weekly Best of the Blogosphere, which comes out on Friday. Yes. And the book quote, which comes out on Saturday, which I think is where we highlighted your book or some of that.
Yeah. And thank you so much for doing that. All right. Well, I'll put those notes, those links, in the show notes. And so this concludes our show today. And if you're a new listener, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to audio podcast or on YouTube. And also, it would just make my day if you would take a minute to rate the show and write a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. My name is Ryan Franklin. Thank you so much for joining us on the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast.